David writes, have mercy on me, O God. Yeah, Psalm 51. Talked about it last time. And then it's not just have mercy on me. There has to be some condition on that. Mercy is not without condition. In fact, it requires at least two things. One is a recipient in need and a giver with sufficiency. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. It's not a big deal, but it's worth looking at that this mercy comes when David writes according to. There are a couple of ways to read that. One is in accordance with, because you are a God of great love, unfailing love. I hear the word unconditional attached to love a lot. I find it impossible for me. It's not impossible for God. I'm coming to like the word unfailing better than unconditional, and it's just my own little mental game. According to your unfailing love, because of your unfailing love, and then in the measure of your unfailing love, in the measure of infinity. That's pretty. I think that's kind of cool. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. I have told you this before, but I kind of often struggle to sense God's closeness. I'm afraid I'm not the guy who's, you hear a song at church, or, you have an experience where the hair on your arm stands up and, sorry, doesn't happen. There's many reasons probably why, including my own hard heart. I don't sense the closeness of God consistently. I have to trust it, although I don't sense it. And for me, I remind myself, I have to, of God's unfailing love, that his love doesn't fail. I do. My love, though, gosh, don't even want to think about how often my love has failed him, failed others. His love doesn't. According to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. In my mind, compassion is an aspect of love, or love is the catalyst. No, that's not it. Love is the source of compassion. I need a God who is compassionate. You do too. Otherwise, we have a God who will be. If God is not compassionate, what else? What would he be instead? Well, one of the things he would be instead, in my experience, what I hear in my own, it's not like I'm hearing voices, but kind of. He would be judging. To be the opposite of compassionate would be dispassionate. Compassion stimulates us in a unique way. As I'm recording this, there have been fires in the last 7 days on in Hawaii, on the island of Maui, that have simply destroyed and devastated large portions of that island. I see the pictures and my heart goes out to the people who have lost their homes and businesses, their livelihoods, and their loved ones. And that's compassion. I mean, it's not. It is. See, compassion is on an emotional level, and that emotion can stir us or prompt us to do something on a behavioral level, like, click a text message to the American Red Cross for relief, or some other relief agency. I hear friends who had a close loved one die, and my heart aches for them. I can't take their sorrow, but the compassion thing. This is one of the idea. It's a fact that God is a God of compassion. In fact, Paul in 2 Corinthians says that he is the God of all compassion, which I take to mean he is the source of all real compassion. Compassion is an emotion. We might have compassionate thoughts, but if there's no emotion attached to it, you'll have to convince me that it's real compassion. If David would ask God for mercy according to his great compassion, then wouldn't this, by extension, wouldn't this mean that God experiences the emotion of compassion? Or is it possible that God has emotion without or has compassion without emotion? I don't see it. But anyway, there's an aspect of God here that is worth looking at. He is merciful. He is loving, and his love is unbounded. His love is unfailing. He has compassion. These are attributes of God that I lose sight of. I don't have a problem remembering God as the creator and sustainer of everything around me that I see, including me. I sometimes have trouble remembering that he's a God of mercy, unfailing love, and great compassion. Well, it's worth reminding yourself of that today. Blot out my transgressions. Every human being from Adam on has needed this, the blotting out of our transgressions. I don't need to go into this big word study on transgressions. You know what that is. When I transgress, I break God's law. I break his design. And it could happen in a million different ways maybe, but it eventually comes down into one or two buckets of, usually for me, pride and indulgence. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion. Blot out my transgressions. Now, the phrase, blot out my transgressions, when we don't, I don't know, 80 years ago, maybe, people, maybe it was more than 80 years ago, 100 years ago. Yeah, it was about 100 years ago. People or more people would write with a pen that had to be dipped in ink and then used until it needed to be dipped again, and then it would have to be blotted, which was really just to make sure that it didn't smudge or that it didn't rub off on something else. That's not exactly what David's talking. He is the word picture is of a scribe writing on a probably papyrus scroll. And when a mistake was made, it could be blotted out, not blotted to keep it from rubbing off on something else, but blotted completely out. It simply means erased. There's an interesting thing about erasing a mistake. Does the mistake go away when I erase it? No, I made the mistake. So, when I erase it, I can replace what was mistaken with something that is at least more reliable. But it doesn't make my mistake go away, but it does make the record of my mistake go away. And that's what David is asking for. Blot out my transgressions. Erase that from your records. Verse 4, wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. Okay, now he's kind of unpacking this transgression thing. Iniquity is it's not a hard word to understand. It's sin. And David goes on to say that. Cleanse me from my sin. Wash away my iniquity. Cleanse me from my sin. I mean, that's a washerman's phrase. To take my garment and wash away that blemish or stain or mark, cleanse it. We have a tremendous promise. That's just way too soft. In 1 John 1:9, about this very thing, John writes, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sin and purify us from all unrighteousness. It's exactly what David was asking for. This cleansing from sin. The only way that happens is when God forgives my sin. Now, I have had sin forgiven and yet experienced the negative consequences of the sin that has been forgiven. Happens. The promise of forgiveness does not mean, and everything's going to be hunky-dory, just like it never happened. No, doesn't work that way. What it does do is it cleanses my soul and my conscience. I've talked about one of the hindrances of this before, and it is false guilt. When I feel guilty, although I am not, so I have been forgiven, when I still feel guilty of a forgiven sin, that's not real guilt. That's false guilt. Where does that come from? Well, that's easy. It comes from hell. Are you wrestling in any way today on this forgiveness thing with guilt or false guilt? David had real guilt. He really had committed adultery with Bathsheba. But he sensed calling out to God, confessing it, asking him for his mercy, that this was this was the cure. Well, it's our cure too. All right, I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy, and I'll try not to be so self-evident and obvious.